Hey everyone.
Welcome to Plotting, a podcast about gaming, education, and everything in between. I'm Adam.
And I'm Charles. We hope you remember to share and subscribe for new episodes every Tuesday. Welcome back, everyone. Today, we'll be discussing everyone's favorite topic from childhood, homework.
Ah, yes, homework.
Okay, so what is homework is maybe the first question we should explore. For those of you who have never been to school before, homework is like stuff that your teacher makes you do, but at your home or house. And it's a bit controversial these days. I don't know when you guys graduated and or if you're teachers or currently students, but homework, at least compared to when I was a kid, when I felt like it wasn't controversial, it was just a fact of life. It was like, yeah, school, home. These days it feels controversial. So Adam, can you tell us a bit about that? Have you heard about this controversy?
Well, I have heard about this controversy, though. I think you're probably more well-versed in it than I am. But, there's a lot of questions around sort of what, like, if we think about this in the professional context, like what is the work-life balance? Are we overstressing our kids? Should every topic have, 30 minutes to an hour of homework, or should it be a more holistic thing? And on some level too, we're discussing the value of is just like repetition learning something that's highly valuable in the learning process, right?
Which I think shows a major assumption for homework. For most, I want to say most homework assignments, and I assume students will agree. A lot of teachers tend to use homework for rote memorization or rote practice because, I don't know, is it we don't trust students to learn noveler things or do larger assignments maybe?
Well, that does bring up, in my mind, the idea of the flipped classroom too, which is something we can get into a little later. But
100%. Yes. In fact, on that similar vein, I do kind of wonder after we have this whole podcast, is the quarantine, is our current, distance learning going to change how students and teachers and families, all the stakeholders, how they see homework?
It's a good question. No one really knows, right? But I do want to flip it around on you. Like I said, I think you probably know a bit more about homework than I do at the moment. So what do you know about the controversy beyond what I explained? And what does it look like when, you're teaching or your peers and colleagues? How are you implementing homework?
Okay, well, I mean, the controversy, I think I was first exposed to it, right, when we were in grad school. And we definitely had to read several articles about it. And then you talk to certain teachers, and teachers are very also, I'll tell you, people that aren't in the in the education field, teachers are also very divided. You'll meet like, old school teachers, and they're very set in their ways, and they're like, for a lot of reasons maybe, but and they'll give like the same homework or to every student, or possibly the same work that they gave last year and the year before that and year before that. And they're very, and I think sometimes it works. There is some of these teachers and you're like, yeah, you guys always have crazy high test scores. And possibly it's because you have that rigor, because your kids are working, like twice as much as maybe other students in a non-homework setting, possibly. Although I hope we can go deeper into that. And then, there's new age teachers maybe that either are redefining what homework means or reinventing like the idea of homework. And of course, teachers that just, I've read studies that are very anti-homework, very like statistically backed up that it like, if it does have a positive effect, maybe on, test taking skills, right? Not even necessarily learning, maybe just on like certain like testable skills that are possibly lower priority than the emotional and social and behavioral health that like I kind of imagine homework like attacking from the kids' health bar after they go home. So that's maybe my initial understanding of the controversy. And how does it look at my school? Well, before the shutdown, okay, and after the shutdown, it does look very different. What I would say generally, the best homework that we give out in my school is either project-based, which I hopefully can defend in front of our viewers today, and what we call personalized, okay? So in that case, they're very like, ideally, students don't all have the same homework, okay?
Interesting.
Yeah,
That seems like it would take a lot of work, though.
it is. But what I'll say for the personalized programs or the personalized homework is mostly they are, what do I want to say? Like computer programs. It'll be like, oh, Khan Academy is maybe a good example of one. That's something that most of the viewers will be familiar with. The idea being that if students are all at different parts of their math learning, it's very easy for a teacher to assign like these 3 students this one lesson, and these 4 students this one lesson, and these 5 students one lesson. And then it's all like graded and tracked basically automatically, right? And Khan Academy is only one of like many programs. So I'm leaning towards, certainly my school district leans towards those being beneficial for students. Personally, I think it does work too. But maybe that's like my way of just having a middle ground. Like if homework's harmful, I'll just give a little bit. Or like I'll find you'll get a little bit of your behavior, mental health back, and try to move away from, I think, yes, we do try to move away from rote learning as much as possible. But let's go on that vein really quickly. Are there things in education that merit rote memorization? What in the field do you need to learn that way, or nothing?
Well, the one that jumps to mind for me, and I think for a lot of people, is their times tables, right? I think it's a pretty universal experience having to sit down with your times tables and running them through, depending where you are and what grade, maybe up to 10 or up to 12, possibly even higher. I think most people would say they've had that experience. So what do you think? Is that helpful? It's certainly the way we've taught multiplication for a very long time.
I mean, you do need, I don't know, we might one day look back at this as old-fashioned, but I want to say, I think you really do need the basic times tables in modern American society to survive, to do many different tasks. I want to add in spelling. I think, although spelling's maybe at the edge now, right? With so many vocal typing programs, you're just like speech to text, and then like spell check. Again, all these other English teachers are going to chase me down right now after having.
I was going to say, are you trying to say spelling is going the way of cursive? It's not so.
Is that still okay? Maybe what I want to go into is rote memorization, if it is necessary. I certainly think a lot of schools or teachers or systems overemphasize it. Like, what is with, as a history teacher, I'm going to say this, what is with all my history teachers trying to make me memorize dates, okay? Or memorize speeches. Insane now now that I teach history, that to me is was just the most pointless thing. I remember agonizing in, I want to say 5th grade maybe. And my teacher was like, everyone has to memorize and give an identical speech, right? There's no improv in the middle of a memorized speech of the Gettysburg Address, or it might've been the preamble of the Constitution. It was some longer, more difficult thing. And I was like, that was an incredibly frustrating thing for me. And did it help me at all? And is that a unique experience? Did you ever have to memorize anything that now you can say, I'm an adult, that was useless?
Well, that's an interesting question. I can't think of one from an early childhood lesson.
Okay.
I did have an AP World History teacher in high school who assigned us, it was extra credit, but we could memorize a speech from any one of the famous world leaders we'd studied. And I memorized a speech by Napoleon Bonaparte in the original French. And I can probably say that was not a super relevant enterprise. I certainly don't remember it today. So,
but did it get you interested in history? Is that how your teacher's going to justify it? Where you were like, for a second, I felt like Napoleon. I empathized.
I mean, I've always been pretty interested in history, so I'm going to defer.
Okay,
we can abstain from that question.
Okay, and so again, I do think there are some things like as a history teacher, I never have my kids memorize dates, exact dates of things. Insane to me. What year did the Pilgrims do the thing? And I'm like, as long as what I guess maybe is more important to me. And again, maybe we should question this too. But I kind of think it's important, the relativeness. What came? Do you know that the Revolutionary War? I mean, in the dumbest one, or the large. Do you know that it came before the Civil War? Do you know even a fundamental understanding of that, or perhaps more do you know that the Boston Massacre came before the Revolutionary War? So that you can start seeing like one causes the other, one leads to the other. But I still would never be like, what's the date of it, huh? And then when was the first shot? And I feel like a lot of tests, even in college, I want to say, in college, didn't you ever have classes that like way overemphasized rote memorization? Like, I'm trying to think of a lot of multiple choice tests, for example.
Well, most of my college classes assigned essays rather than multiple choice tests.
You went to better classes than mine then, possibly. Okay. But we do kind of agree that homework can be good for rote memorization, huh? Is that controversy over? For the important things.
We solved it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wanna go back and dig in to something that we were talking about, because you said, like rote memorization, it can increase your testable skills, and it can potentially, for stuff like multiplication or otherwise, maybe it's the best way. You just have to practice. And then we were talking, right? And you were saying like, do you need to memorize exact dates? And I promise I'm getting to something here. So what I thought you were going to say when you said, do we need to memorize exact dates, is because we can just Google it.
Oh, okay. Oh,
because to me, I don't know if you ever got this, but I remember this vividly from many adults throughout my childhood. If I asked, why do I have to do my math homework? I was an acceptable math student, but I never really enjoyed math for a long time. Not until like high school did I ever come to enjoy math. And so as a kid, I would always be like, why do I have to do math? Calculators can just do it for me. And almost
especially long division. I'm like, what?
Almost the rote response that I would get is, well, you won't always have a calculator in your pocket. And now we do. We all have calculators in our pocket all the time. We have computers with access to the internet and calculator and all sorts of other things. And so, is that rote memorization still necessary? Like, does the you don't have a calculator in your pocket argument hold up?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that definitely cuts down the number of things we need to rotely memorize. And like anything you can Google in 10 seconds, is it worth teaching kids? Or like worth teaching anyone to a degree versus, the less testable skills, unfortunately, like critical thinking and like source analysis, which I've had some tests do. I remember like AP US history, like analyzing primary sources, but like what a niche skill back then compared to the preponderance of rote memorization style, grammatical rules, spelling. I'm trying to think of all the algorithms that we had to learn. So with that in mind, okay, I guess let's tie in our second subject before we dive deeper into only homework.
All right.
So the question is, if we're like, oh, rote memorization isn't that important, possibly a lot of homework isn't that important, and possibly it doesn't work to some degrees, like it's not even teaching you what you want. What about gaming? So to bring this in, what I want to say is we've both played games where we've done the gaming homework. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, you're talking about, we're in this context, right? We're thinking about homework as sort of being laying the groundwork, the very basic, like almost just learning from like the tribal knowledge that's available before you actually go in and play the game. That's what we're talking about, right? Yeah,
to me, I'm thinking like independent researching of a game, watching tutorials on it. And I feel like those fall more into homework, if I had to draw an analogy, than classwork, which I guess would be the equivalent of actually playing the game, maybe, especially like when you're playing like with your friends. So like I was thinking, when I was a kid, we'd play like so many games. Let's start with Magic the Gathering. So Magic the Gathering, and there's a lot of fun parts of Magic the Gathering. It's a card game. It's a which I know you're familiar with, but for viewers, it's a trading card game, still popular today. And you collect cards and you fight, usually a one-on-one situation. But my friends and I would play a lot, and that was like so much fun. And you get better, right, by playing with other people, maybe like talking to them about it. but I also felt like a lot of the fun of Magic the Gathering is by yourself. Is that weird? Like a lot of the fun of Magic the Gathering was like building my deck by myself. A lot of it was researching about cards. A lot of it was, considering the cards, I guess.
You're not wrong, but actually, I do want to quickly make a distinction because
Ooh.
I think it's really, really interesting. When we were talking about homework at your school, you said we do assign homework. The best kinds of homework are project based and individualized.
Yes.
And so here, right, we're talking about game homework, and immediately you said, "Oh, it's about like researching and it's all this like independent stuff. It's building the deck." But I would argue that there's also game homework that falls more into like the brute force level of homework. So, in like an MMORPG game environment where that like this is the grind, right? Many gamers are familiar with the grind.
Yeah.
Doing the same quest or killing the same enemy just like over and over and over because it's either really efficient for experience, or maybe there's one particular loot drop that you need from that like location, and so you're just gonna like grind it out. And in Magic the Gathering, I don't think either of us has ever played competitively to this level, but there are at the top end players, as I understand, who will literally just deal like fake hand after fake hand as they like build their deck, basically to like grind out the impurities, right? To get it into like the most I guess effective and just efficient formula for the deck. The least randomized, despite the semi-random nature of the game. And so while I do want to keep talking about, gaming homework and like, is it good? I think it's important that we also address like there's the other kinds of gaming homework as well, and think about it from those angles.
You made me think of, I just want to add one more to your list. StarCraft. I played a ton of StarCraft, and build orders, memorizing a build order, fine tuning it. So what that means is you like play the same game. You're playing like almost exact same beginning of the game over and over. And you just like practice like doing this thing when this other thing happens. Ideally, like you're almost sometimes following a clock, honestly, like looking at a clock and being like, and now. And it's not objectively like if that was all the game was, it wouldn't be popular. But what makes that homework, especially because you could do it by yourself, like by yourself at night, and then the next time your friends are on, like that's maybe the payoff, right? Is that you have a time to like flex those skills or to help your team. And so what it sounds like we're saying though is that we kind of agree with gaming homework, despite us having hesitations about non-gaming homework. So, but why is that then? Why do we think it's more valuable with regards to gaming? Possibly, is that what we think, or just like based on our life experience?
Well, I'll go first. I'll say that overall, I do think that the project-based free-form learning, whether that's in the classroom or in gaming, is the more valuable type of learning for the same reason that the grindy homework is less valuable. Doing the grind to get the like one rare magic item or perfecting your build order still doesn't mean that much if you don't understand like, I guess, the critical thinking component, right?
Ooh,
if you don't understand
this is
the
a great
shape of
analogy.
what you're doing, then having a key, like having one component down isn't going to get you there. But I will qualify this and say that for true mastery, some level of the grind is required. And I think an easy comparison here is sports, right? Like people know of these stories of people who in various sports, right? Michael Jordan, or you can tell I'm a big sports guy because these are just rolling off my tongue. But my point is that there are people who are sort of intuitive players at all things, right? And so they understand the overall shape of it on a level that instantly gives them this advantage. But even those people never reach true success without being willing to put in, the 10,000 layups and the 10,000
free throws
shots and whatever, right? So that's where I'm at. I will say that while I do think project, individual, free-form learning is the best kind of learning, that it does need to be supported by a framework of practice and repetition.
So here's the analogy. Let's draw a quick 3-part analogy. In sports, being able to be aware of the whole field and make those critical decisions in the moments is similar to in a video game. In StarCraft, like, you know, actually reacting and responding and, you know, making those decisions that can't necessarily be practiced rote memorization style, which is the equivalent again. So the third thing that's equivalent to is in homework or classwork, honestly, project-based learning, or the type of learning that leads to, again, those like untestable skills, those executive functioning skills, which is like, let's list some executive functioning skills really quickly. Critical thinking. I should know these off the top of my head. You know, like executive functioning, it's like your brain making decisions that are wise, and that's like the opposite of a rote memorize skill, right? Like the, okay, so then to finish the
Pros and
analogy,
cons.
those three
Yeah.
we're contrasting to, again, like practicing rote free skills, memorizing build orders, practicing them, and practicing memorizing times tables and spelling and other rote memorization. Which kind of sounds like what we're leading towards is there are types of homework and that are especially good or especially bad in our opinion, but there's still, you need to do some of the especially bad homework. Do you agree with that? There's some things that need to be rotely memorized, and that the best way to do that is to have kids do it at home by themselves?
I don't know. This may put me on the wrong side of history here with this whole homework controversy, but I am going to say that the rote practice needs to be there. But, you know, I'll qualify it by saying, and this is where, you know, we can get back to the idea of the flipped classroom. Maybe the rote practice time doesn't have to be by yourself. You don't have to go home and grind multiplication tables for 2 hours alone.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, you know, you do a quick video lesson where you learn the concept, then you come into the classroom, you maybe do like a hands-on demonstration where you're now practicing that skill, cementing that you have it down, and then you get into doing the grind of it, except now maybe instead of sitting there at your desk with your multiplication sheet,
the mad minute, is that what we're talking about? You're like,
yeah. Man, that's how much multiplication just gets ground into you. I almost just shouted out the answer to 5
I know
because you did it that way.
I have to win. I have to get over 30 to get that gold sticker.
That's right. Yeah. So that's what I'll say is the practice has to be done somewhere, but maybe there's a better way to implement it than just sending, because that's not the fun part, right?
Mm-hmm.
The grind isn't the fun part. And there are people, and I'll bring it back to video games. There are absolutely people who are willing to just sit and do the grind. They will grind day in, day out. You know, like these are the people in MMOs with like 20 maxed characters with all the
like
legendary
full rep
gear,
and stuff, and you're like, what?
Yeah, who've like never done like a raid or like participated in a battleground or anything that would sort of be like the objective of the grind in my mind anyway.
Yeah.
And just like that, I think with learners, you have people who are willing to do the grind because they're told it's important, you know, and so they will go home and they will do their multiplication tables until they've got it, and then they'll come back and you know, I guess those are the learners that have thrived under like the old school style teaching that you're talking about. But how do we reach that other kind of learner? I would argue by flipping the grind, giving them the interesting stuff to do at home and in like on their own and in these short bursts, and then doing the grindy part together with friends and in these like fun and imaginative ways, offers a way to bring them into the process that isn't there under the traditional model.
And I think you're highlighting it's more than just flipping the classroom. So again, flipping a classroom, for people that aren't aware of this, is kind of new movement in teaching that didn't exist when we were kids, presumably, possibly because videos weren't as good back then, or there's no internet. I don't know. But like the idea of a flipped classroom is, again, anything that is like teacher centered, anything that could be recorded into a video, you just record it as a video and you get your kids to do that at home. Because then in the class, they're all doing like interactive discussions is a big part of it, but also like more interactive activities. But what I want to say is I really like that the key focus of your argument to me isn't that like necessarily it needs to be a flipped classroom, but it's reimagining not the need for rote memorization, but how they do it. So like the Mad Minute, whether it's your mom at home, you know, timing you and you're doing, I got to memorize this, or at school, you're like, well, we flipped the classroom. He watched those videos at home and now he's doing the Mad Minute here and with his peers around him. Still isn't maybe ideal when we can invent, and like things have been invented, right, by now, that other ways, I guess, of rote memorizing it, which feels like either a call forward or a call back to our whole gamification episode, which possibly doesn't exist yet. And I definitely agree with that, because like making them more interactive, making them more fun, like you can memorize things without grinding is it's going to be my argument there. I'm going to take a stand on that. I think teachers, we have a responsibility, or educators, or anyone maybe who's you know, instructing others, has a responsibility by here in 2020. We do not need to be mad minuting people when you can not trick, but kind of like get students to memorize things in more engaging ways, and it's more authentic too, right? Like you said, like the kids that were going to do great at the Mad Minute, we're going to do great at anything else anyways. like they're just compliant, or they're just, you know, hardworking, or for whatever reason. So our real focus has to be on the grays, the I don't know what, 50%, the other percentage of students that it's a struggle and they really don't want to do this grind thing, especially because, you know, back to the MMO grinding, that's something they want, right? like they're like, I like this game, I've chosen this. And in teaching, you know, you want to give kids choice. That's a big part. But certain things there aren't choices for, in the sense of like, you have to memorize this times table. Like that, there's no choice there. And we can like hide it. We're like, well, you could learn spelling first or times tables. And you're like, oh, I have a choice. I guess the times tables. Yeah, you chose it. But realistically, like they don't have a choice, but they need to learn it. So
I do wonder, I'm going to sound like a really old man for a while, so get ready for the old man yells at cloud portion of the episode.
We should have a segment. It's like, Adam's yell. Okay, Adam, the old guy.
Some nice little animation going.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my angry rant about the darn kids these days. I do wonder if the grind is getting to be less acceptable with younger kids. And I mean that both in terms of the classroom and in terms of video games. And I'll even apply that to like people our age and just a little bit younger than us.
Yeah,
because
anyone younger than us counts as too young.
clearly. So, and I'm going to start here with video games. Yeah, I'm going to start with video games and then bring it back to the classroom. So, in gaming, right, there's sort of a trend in the AAA games market. So like the really popular, very large studio funded
Call of Duty,
Overwatch, League of Legends, Fortnite.
Yes, we said that at the same time on my screen.
I'm glad that we got to Fortnite, because Fortnite, right, is sort of the epitome of my old man yelling thing. I think part of what is so appealing about this style of games to a younger audience is that they don't require the grind. Each match is self-contained. You can, you know, if you want to like play one round and just like totally goof off and like, ha ha ha, here I am with my friends, not caring, we're gonna build like a giant walrus this time instead of playing the like shooting game. And then the next time you want to be like, all right, I'm going to try and really like be super competitive and win the game. You can do that very easily. And there's no real like sunk cost, I guess, to playing the games in that way. Now, if you compare that to something like, I would say sort of like we were almost at the tail end, right, of like the big like RPG, MMORPG wave. Um, I'm talking, EverQuest, World of Warcraft. Um, and yeah, there are still
Yeah.
MMOs and they still have player bases, but they're not like the like AAA titles anymore. And I would argue it's because the like younger audience isn't picking those games up, because even when they do, they like play for a little while and it's like, like, okay, I played for like 30 minutes and now where's my like hard reset, or like why haven't I gotten anywhere yet?
Mm-hmm.
And in the classroom, I think this is showing too, because I hear it from many of the teachers that I interact with, both in like the K-12 education, but also professors are saying to me like, it's so weird. Like the undergrads this year, they really aren't willing to like put in the work. Like if and I hear this a lot about COVID. I have always had my assignments listed on my syllabus, but now the students aren't willing to go look at the syllabus. They need me to like load each individual assignment with its due date and stuff into Canvas as well. And so, obviously there's a co-adjacence of factors there, because COVID and remote learning is an extraordinary circumstance for many people. But I'm going to stick with my old man yelling at clouds argument and say that these darn kids just aren't willing to do the grind anymore. They don't see the value of the grind.
That's a skill in itself. The ability to grind, or the ability to invest and like know that practice, the discipline maybe is like, you're like, so the Mad Minute exists and it's boring because you need to learn to do boring things. Plus you'll learn math. Like both of those are important skills to learn. Okay. And I definitely see that. And it's great. So I do want to say like, man, am I at the edge of that? I was trying to think like playing League of Legends when I was growing up, my friends, they played like League of Legends and Heroes of New Earth. These are both two, one of them's dead now, but one of them, they're living MOBAs. Okay. Which again, a MOBA is a style game that it's usually like a 5v5 team. It's like co-op, but also you're versus another team and you have like a single character. And like Adam was saying, to some degree it resets. Like you start and you can mess around one round and then maybe the next round you have a whole new experience and one didn't lead to the other. But I do remember a frustration of mine with League of Legends. This is why I ended up on Heroes of New Earth. But the game I didn't end up playing, my frustration was that it did have permanent long-term effects from playing a lot. Like they eventually capped out. It was only like you could get max level in League of Legends, but before you're max level, when you play with people that are max level, they would just be better. They would have the exact same characters you possibly, and just have slightly more damage or slightly more health or an ability you literally can get. And so my thinking, and maybe this can give you some empathy for those poor new people. It was like, oh man, do I want to invest all this time into this game just to get good enough that I can even hold my own, that I can be like a person? Because before that, you're just like, oh, this noob who's just climbing the ladder. Like, is it worth all that investment to practice this skill? Is it worth it to memorize all these dates when I'm not going to take a history? What if I like don't take this history test again in the future? So, but at least, that's better than paying to win, I guess.
Definitely better to paying than to pay.
We both hate that.
I will qualify. As I think I played League of Legends longer than you did, and I will say it's interesting because I think some of what you're talking about is like the old like runes system and like certain summoner
they
spells.
Lost me. They'll never get in my business.
But they've actually done away with that entirely.
Because the children couldn't take the grind. They could.
Right? That's what I'm saying. And so my account has like tons of like currency in now too, because you got refunded for like all the stuff that you had bought. And I had like 7 pages of runes that I purchased, right? And with my like in-game currency that I grounded and saved for. And so then they were like, oh, by the way, we're getting rid of this. Here's like 1 billion currency back. And I'm like, oh.
Now you can buy what? Cosmetics with it? Is that it? Just
skins? Yeah, there's not even a lot you can buy with that particular currency. Basically,
I do like this new trend in gaming. This is a bit of a off top. Yeah, I love this new trend in gaming of so many games being, oh no, and this is me being the cloud, I guess, that you're yelling. So many games being like, equivalent games. Everyone's the same and equal. And you're right, like grinding in the past can't change anything, and neither can buying it. I just love that so many games, I guess, want to say are funded by just skins. Like it's crazy to me that works. I mean, I get it, but I also I will never spend money on like a cosmetic skin. I'm like, oh, it doesn't give you an advantage. All right, looks like I'll have $3 instead of no dollars. And then like everyone, especially it's always embarrassing when you get like good at a game too, and they're like, is he new? And I'm like, no, I just would rather have $3. Despite this game, I have like 1,000 hours in it or something. Wow. Okay. What can we go into some back to the homework? Let's do an abrupt change back to homework.
All right. The old man yells at cloud is over.
Yeah, great. What are some of the best homework assignments from your childhood? Maybe I can rip off some ideas, or our listeners can.
Best homework assignments from our childhood.
We're gonna extrapolate wisdom from our own teachers who did this, gave us, me and you, these assignments. Let's pass it on.
All right. Well, this one's not really a childhood. It was a high school lesson.
That counts. That's our childhood, man. How old are we that high school doesn't count as childhood?
I don't know. You're older than me, though. I guess.
True.
But so this was a freshman year, so sure, we'll say that's like a childhood lesson. And what I really liked about this is, so we had read these 3 works, all in a similar vein. And I'm trying to remember exactly which ones they were. I think it was like A Pale View of Hills, The Remains of the Day. This was for an English, like literacy, that type of class.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the exact title of the freshman lit class in my high school, but and there was another one that I can't remember the title of. Anyway, sort of 3 works that all touched on like post World War II Japan as sort of the central topic, and like the effect that like the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki had on like the next generation of Japanese and like the soul of the Japanese people. Very like deep introspective works, probably on some level maybe some people would say not appropriate for 14-year-olds. But anyway, I loved
what was your teacher's name? Just kidding. Okay, so what was good about this homework?
The ultimate assignment that we ended up being given was we had to write an essay. Doesn't sound that interesting.
Doesn't sound great at all yet.
All right, wait for it. 1-page essay portrayed on anything but paper.
And
so it became this like art lesson almost. So for mine, I got an old picture frame, and I got a mirror at the store, and I broke the mirror and ended up sort of creating this essay that was like diffracted off the back of the mirror and almost like projected out into the front of the picture frame.
Wow.
And so as you tried to read it, the essay, it was very difficult to read. But I did get an A on the assignment, so apparently not impossible to read. Or my portrayal was just that good.
Possibly he was like, this looks good. Or they were like, oh, this looks good. I can't read it. Oh, I'll just give them an A. This is high quality.
High quality art.
Yeah.
And like in the end, that like making that piece of artwork, as it were, had nothing to do with learning like English language arts. I didn't learn any comma rules or like grammatical skills. But I think in having to introspect, like, how am I going to portray this essay, not just in the words of the essay, but in like the physical portrayal of this piece, it made me really think about the nature of the books that we had read in a way that I wouldn't have if I was just, writing another 5-paragraph accordion essay about where, paragraph 1 is about the first book, paragraph 2 is about the second book, paragraph 3 is about the third book, and here's my conclusion. So yeah, that's the one that kind of stands out to me when you ask like about favorite homeworks. I'm sure I have more, but That's the one that jumped into my mind.
That's a good one. And I want to say for mine, the best homework assignment from my childhood, I mean, best is so ambiguous. It's like, which one did I learn the most from, or which is a memorable one? So let's begin a segment of Charles bragging about something hilarious from his past, which is when I was in, I want to say middle school or high school. There was this one, I took an AP art history class once, and I think the teacher was good. If she's out there listening to this, I think she was a good teacher. I think so. I just think AP art history was a very rote memorization class, actually. Shockingly, you'd think, oh, an art, but it's because it wasn't an art class. It was like memorizing paintings and styles and artist names and dates. Oh my gosh, it might have been everything I hate now that I'm thinking about it as an adult. But still, one of the best assignments I'd ever gotten was in that class, because the premise was, it was like the art historian as artists. And I believe this was possibly the last assignment we did before we took the AP test. So maybe just like possibly like a blow off assignment, as like, you're like, you're about to take the test, take it easy, do some art. Maybe. I'm trying to remember when it fell sequentially, but I thought it was a really cool way to get the class engaged. And I almost wish we had done it more frequently, because it was really, it's so different to make the art than to, just study it, especially if you were doing like a particular style, what you're emulating. And mine, I ended up doing a maybe more abstract. It was like hilarious. I brought like a plastic cup to school, and this is for like this month-long art project. And what I did is as we went into the classroom that day that we were presenting, I filled it with dirt from like very obviously when we were in line. I remember, I think like everyone saw. And then I walked in the classroom with just this plastic cup with dirt in it. And the key was that I gave this whole like presentation about how it like represented art. And it was something like, oh, art is so subjective. It was very like, I'm 14 and this is deep style thing. But my teacher gave me a good grade on it. And I remember shaking as I presented it, because it was such like a kind of like a brave thing from my child that I would not usually do. I think I was more of a good student than that typically, but it was like gutsy. And I don't know, it was just hilarious because my friends were in that class and they put like a lot of effort in. Like some of them did like a whole art project, and then here is me clearly with a plastic cup filled with dirt, just like basically improvising why this could represent art, and it's like transiency, or it's okay. The point is, what I'm noticing is a theme between our answers is art. Is art an amazing way to? Is that the best style of homework? Why would it be the best?
Is it just we're art minded?
Creative? Oh man, yeah, that is a.
But I do think the creative and art. All right, like I said, I'm art minded. You're art minded. I'm preaching to the choir here, but here's the argument I'm going to make about why art is really good homework, and just good for humans in general. Art requires us to think in ways that we don't typically, because whether it's music or pictures, a movie, anyone can look or listen and just move on with their life. But to actually extract value from art, you have to, it's very much a what you put in is what you get out kind of enterprise. And I would say this is actually an epiphany I had relatively, late in life. Because when I was younger, my parents would take my brother and I, if we went on trips, we would go to like the museum of that town, and we'd walk around the museum. And I was always so bored. I didn't understand, how can you take this long to walk through the exhibit? Like, it's not that hard. You just walk and you look and walk and look.
I've already absorbed that whole painting, mother. Why are we still here?
Exactly. And maybe that's just something about being a kid, but I do think that I'll argue it's more to do with like immaturity in relation to art. Anyone can read the words on a page of a book, but to really think about that book and like what it means just takes that extra effort. And same thing with an art gallery, same thing with, so that's why I think art is good homework, is because it requires you to put in the critical thinking
Yeah,
And getting back to our like grind versus project slash individual style, art requires us to engage in like the individual style learning because
it
there's no
is.
grind
Yeah.
to art.
It
Like,
is personalized in that sense. And
mm,
it's not Googleable, right? That's something that hopefully you're picking skills from that you couldn't possibly unless you plagiarize, I guess. But I do think that, yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, when I was younger too, I had the very similar experiences. And now that I'm older, I do enjoy art more. And is it A, because I'm choosing to go there? Is it B, because I have more context for like the time period or the art style? Is it but yeah, project based, I guess. Art based is definitely where I lean towards with my own when I'm giving out homework. Uh where else should we go with this?
I don't know. Do we want to wrap it around to, sort of our recommendations for homework, or where do we think
Sure. Where
homework in the future?
what is our takeaways and suggestions, I guess, based on our discussion today, based on our experience with games especially.
Mhm.
And what do we see as the future of homework? So, what are some takeaways you have? Well, I
All right.
think.
I see why I always go first now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think to me the single biggest takeaway is that learning about anything is very much a what you put in is what you get out kind of enterprise. And so, in the classroom, there's a lot of conversation about like intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation and all of this stuff. But, I think if we look at games, we can see that providing ways for people to get intrinsically motivated is just that's it, that's everything. As soon as you can spark that spark within someone and then they go off and do the work on their own, you
Mhm.
know the kid who goes and like does the art project is going to learn so much more than the kid who goes and writes a 5-page essay. Like that. So that's my takeaway, is that the critical thinking is always worth it. And I'll extrapolate it to games here by saying that I truly do believe that, in many games, knowing the critical thinking will allow you to be better than the grind.
Like mental flexibility and those sort of skills. I feel
Yeah, like
like
thinking of alternative ways to
mm,
overcome challenges, um, and to plug one of my passions. It's part of why I think Dungeons and Dragons is one of the best games, and just like tabletop role playing games where you're not interfacing with a computer or like a totally strict set of rules that mean you can only take so many different actions, um, is because it unlocks you to like come up with that freedom and think about, how would I actually approach this instead of like, okay, I'm playing a computer game, so I can attack once every second, so I'm going to
mhm.
stand in front of you and hit with my sword, and then you're going to hit me back with your sword, and then I'm going to hit you again with my sword. Um, so that's my takeaway, my
I
big
mean,
takeaway. What about you?
yeah, like the game you're talking about at the very end, to me, the biggest problem to solve there is like maybe min maxing. And that's it. And that's why the flexibility that Dungeons and Dragons or other tabletop RPGs tend to give you is fantastic to me. And we used to have a professor who said that like art is problem solving and really pushed that, math is actually one of the easiest things to integrate with art, which I think is controversial for other teachers who haven't, thought about it maybe. And it's like I really agree with that now. To me, that those skills you gain problem solving, isn't that like the real skills we want the kids to have, short of, I guess, maybe memorizing times tables, but like problem solving, critical thinking, things that you could never memorize. There's no build order for critical thinking, I guess, unless it's like really abstract open questions. Maybe you're like, this is a good source. um
Well, I think, extrapolating like the StarCraft thing, right?
mhm.
Never was a big StarCraft player myself, but from what I understand, like you could have a perfect build order. You could be pumping out 2 more times more units than your enemy. But at the end of the day, if you're like micro skills and your ability to actually like go over to the battlefield and take command and see like, oh, they're coming in with like, again, forgive me, StarCraft fans, they're coming in with heavy troopers, so I need to counter with my my flying troops because heavy troopers have advantage over my infantrymen that I have on that front currently. You know, I think players with that kind of skill can pull off these like upsets, I guess, because they understand the shape of what they're doing and they're thinking about it critically. They're not just plugging like, okay, I have produced 800 Zerglings in the last 8 seconds. Now just go, Zerglings, go, attack.
I mean, 100%.
I'll just issue my
I do think we need to show you photos
fans.
of StarCraft units, and I'm going to have you make up their names. You're like, Flying Worm Spitter. Mutalisk.
This is that version of like the mom who sees pictures of Pokemon and picks out their names.
What would you call this? Yeah. I do think, staying on the same StarCraft thing, I matured as a player in StarCraft, and a turning point for me was when I started scouting enemies' bases, because when I first did StarCraft, I was very rote. I had a good build order, and I didn't know any other ones really. So I didn't really bother scouting because like, I don't care what you're doing. I'm doing the same thing no matter what. And like, you could tell
there's
when
no
I got
counter to this play.
I mean, even if there was a counter, the point is I didn't know any other way to do it. So like, but until I pushed myself to scout, to try to respond to what they're doing, you know, inventing new build orders on the fly, or developing and learning new things, new styles of playing, I didn't really improve as a StarCraft player. I like, you couldn't really climb up past a certain point, even with like the perfect single build order. And that was a big lesson for me, I think, when I was younger. And I hope I applied that to my real life learning, because definitely I think it leads to, you know, learning to learn is maybe the best thing you can get. One of the best things you can get from homework, or from video game homework, running with that analogy.
Yeah, I think learning to learn is one of the most important skills anyone can have in life. So.
Yeah. Okay, that is our show today, everyone. Thank you so much for being here.
Right. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
That brings us to the end of today's cast.
We hope you had fun, learned a little, and join us next week. Don't forget to subscribe for new episodes each Tuesday.
You can also find us on social media at Plotting Podcast, or on our subreddit r/plotting podcast.